Says starting. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is Tom Aiken from Boom Life. We're all about values-driven success, and we do this BoomShare series to help kind of share the message of other people who are out there doing some pretty great things, and trying to help share the values behind what they do. Today, our guest is Ben Hanten. Ben is a lifelong entrepreneur. He is a co-founder of an event called Wire Me Awake that is held annually at the University of South Dakota. And he's also the founder of Think 29, which is a recent startup that is focused on creating events to connect entrepreneurs and help feed the entrepreneurial community along the Interstate 29 corridor, mostly between North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and Nebraska. So, Ben, how you doing, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me, Tom. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about Think 29, your mission, and I'm really interested in the values that inspired you to start this up. What's
Yeah.
driving you?
So Think 29 was originally a plan that we had in our mind, and when I say we, a couple co-founders and I, a few years ago came together and we thought that there needed to be something to tie in some of the individual entrepreneurial efforts in our region. Because there were three of us, we all kind of were pulling in a little bit different direction, and we all had very busy lives, and so the plan kind of got put on the back shelf as we all built our individual companies out. And actually, I was at an event, startup weekend in Fargo, and I saw somebody wearing an old Think 29 shirt, and I was like, that's a shame that thing still doesn't exist. And at the urging of the person wearing it, we kind of talked about bringing it back. And what Think 29 is today is a company that I'm running, and the plan is to, again, try to connect the entrepreneurs in this region, but we've come at it with a lot more ambitious plan, hired staff, we have an office, and what we're trying to do is to say that people in Sioux City and Sioux Falls and Fargo and Brookings and Aberdeen and Watertown and Yankton and Vermilion and Madison and Mitchell and all of these cities in this region are very similar. And when people from outside look at us, they don't necessarily know the distance between these cities. And, it's oftentimes less than their commutes to work in Boston and New York and Chicago and LA. So the only barrier that makes these cities different from each other and not branding together is whatever we've created in our own mind. And so we want to take the entrepreneurial efforts that are happening in each of these cities and brand them as one region. Other areas in this country have done that successfully. They've realized that they're too small to stand alone. And when you start to group things together, you start noticing there's a lot of real strengths out there. So that's the idea, is not to be a competitor with people in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, but actually just to promote everything that they're doing.
So would you say one of the values that's inspiring you to do this is kind of trying to create a sense of community and support for people who are kind of taking risks and trying to start new businesses?
Yeah, I think that's right. Community is a very strong word. If I was going to create a Venn diagram of things that get me excited, community is one of them. Entrepreneurism is another, and anything that involves investing into startups is another. And so, I think 29 kind of fits right in an intersection of all of that. But the community building is so important, and it's a long haul. And so, showing results a couple months in is tough, but we know that these kind of things will continue to build.
Yeah, and if I listened to the long list of cities and towns you listed that are kind of along that I-29 corridor, folks who are active in that community, some of them are larger cities or at least mid-sized cities, and some of them are pretty small towns and cities that a lot of people don't realize there are folks with great ideas and new, fresh ideas and innovations that can be created. And so I think it's important, what you're doing to help give people a forum where they can, a platform where they can connect like that. And so, is that kind of what you're really driving at? Is trying to get those like-minded people together to share ideas or at least to help each other?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, being an entrepreneur, doing something a little bit crazy that's not been done before, sometimes that can be a lonely business. And, while people in Sioux Falls and Fargo and maybe Sioux City have some people that they can go to coffee with, have a group they can lean on, that might not be a luxury for people in smaller towns. So why can't we connect those people together when they're only 45 minutes apart? And so the way we're going to do that is to showcase people online by profiling people doing cool things, but also we're going to hold lots of events where we actually cross-pollinate those people. So one of our early events is called Anthropology. We've held two. We've got another one next week, and we're going to continue to build these every month. And the idea is that we're bringing in an entrepreneur from another city to present to a local audience. So if we're talking Sioux City, Iowa, we're not going to allow anybody from Sioux City, Iowa to present at their own event. We want to showcase people who are in the region but might not be exposed to your startup community. And so that cross-pollination is really at the core of what we're doing, is to say, look, he's just like you, she's just like you, doing something kind of crazy in the entrepreneurial space, and it's somebody you should know. And so we can say that, but we physically want to show that. We really will cross-pollinate these cities. And so that's kind of at the core of what we want to do, is to say it's not enough that everybody's doing these things individually, but when we put them collectively, it's a lot.
Well, I think that's a great idea as a way to cross-pollinate by, kind of importing your speakers, but keeping them within that I-29 corridor. So how are things going so far? You've had a few events, it sounds like. What kind of turnout are you getting?
Yeah, so we held an event in Vermilion, and that was a town that, for one thing, let me be very clear that community building in communities where you don't live is tough work, and we know that this is gonna take some time, and it's gonna take a lot of finding allies and really trusting those allies and working with them. People that will support us, we understand we need to support them too. That's kind of how community works. And so our first event in Vermilion was a city where, like, you know what, let's not do it. I live in Yankton. Let's not do it in Yankton. So we started in Vermilion, and we had a nice turnout there. And we went to Sioux City, and we had a great turnout. And then we've got one in Yankton, and it looks to be another bigger turnout. And we're finding some people are following us and traveling with us, and that's kind of what we're hoping for. So for those events, so far so good. We want to focus on the southeast part of South Dakota right now, and then just keep expanding that out as we kind of define this region. But we run a website too. So think29.com is profiling entrepreneurs. It's talking about events. We're trying to get people on the mindset that we should have one calendar. I think that's important in entrepreneurial event culture, is that people will create an event in, let's say, Sioux Falls, and they have no idea that something's going on important in Sioux City that same day, or there's something going on in Aberdeen that same day. We think the idea of having one calendar where people will know what's cool or what's happening in a region is important. So a lot of our work right now is actually kind of boring. It's aggregating people's calendars, and it's trying to get them to share with us what their plans are. And so sometimes it's a shared Google spreadsheet that's like, here are the events that we have on the horizon. So those kind of things don't look very sexy. They're not interesting, but it's important to build out that expectation that you can go to one place and know what's going on in this region.
Kind of like a community newspaper, but a 21st century version, I guess.
Yeah, and so the larger question you had though too was how's it going? And I think the jury's still out. We've got a lot of work to do. I know that I launched this at a pretty tough time for me, just because I am committed to a lot of other projects. But the way I tend to work is I'll jump into something and then figure it out later. And so March I had, I've got other businesses. I've got a huge event that I planned in my town, and all that stuff was happening at the same time, but it still seemed important to me to get this going, or I wouldn't do it. So We launched Think 29 knowing that it was going to be a tough calendar for me, but now I'm past some of those things and I'm ready to dig in.
So well, you kind of talked about a challenge. One of the questions I wanted to ask was, what's your biggest challenge so far? Is that has that been it? Is your ability to manage time, or have there been other challenges that are bigger?
Yeah, I think it's probably the biggest challenge for me is probably time. I when we go to conferences, I know you're a guy who goes to conferences too, and you hear speakers who say yes to everything. Your life will change when you say yes. Well, I'm the kind of guy who said yes to everything, and that has led me to an overbooked calendar. And I think it's one of those things where you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And I'm at the point now where having 6 or 7 priorities means that I don't really have one at all. And so I'm trying to figure out what that priority is. And for me right now, that's building my local business, and it's building Think 29, and it's trying to pare down. I think that saying yes sounds wonderful for people who are used to saying no, but if you're used to saying yes your whole life, now it's time to say no. It's all about balance, and so that's the biggest challenge for me is, I've got a full-time employee who's looking for work and looking for challenges at Think 29, and I need to make sure that my attention is there to show her what work needs to be done, and instead of working on 6 things simultaneously.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of times in my life that it's really difficult to help people from a position of weakness, and
Yeah.
when time is your biggest weakness in terms of just having it available to do all of the things you want to do, that does become a tough thing to juggle. I could certainly relate to that.
I was at a coffee meeting this afternoon, and somebody said to me, yeah, if I was relating this issue to them, and they were saying, if you've got 1 or 2 goals, you're going to accomplish 1 or 2 goals, and if you have 3 or 4 goals, you're going to accomplish 1 or 2 goals. But if you have 5 or 6 goals, you're probably going to accomplish 0 goals. And I think that that's probably right. I've done pretty well by juggling a lot, but it's time to pare down my list a little bit.
So, kind of leads me into my next question of anything you think you would do differently, any mistakes that you'd make that I guess you learned a lesson from that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I think that I've got this thing in my head sometimes of how I need to. I've got an idea of how I can help something or how I can make something better, but I need to make sure that that's aligned with the things that get me excited, the things that align with some of my business goals, my personal goals. And so if I'm just trying to help everybody play the hero, if you will, who's that really helping? Because at the end of the day, it's less time for me to work on things that really matter.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so you mentioned something coming up next, another anthropology event. Maybe give us some more specifics in case some of the folks who watch our episode here are in the area and want to attend.
Yeah, very good. So Tuesday night at the GAR Hall in Yankton, we're going to do our 3rd anthropology event, and we are bringing in Coy Yance from Mantis Digital Arts in Brookings. He's going to give a brief presentation and tell us about what they're building with their game studio. Again, we're importing somebody who does not live here, and we're showing them off to our community, but also for that startup founder, we feel like we're going to be able to give them that fresh feedback that they used to get from their own community, right? At a certain point, when a startup founder is pitching to their community over and over and over, they begin to be taken not for granted, but maybe some of those tough questions don't get asked anymore. And so getting them in front of a fresh set of eyes, we feel is important for them too. So we've got a presentation from Coy, and then we're going to have some refreshments and snacks and beer, and try to get some of the community building done too. So we know there are people coming from Sioux City, we know there are people coming from Sioux Falls and Brookings, and I think outside of Think 29, I'm not really sure that there are people who are trying to import others into their community. That's like our number one goal. If people locally show up, fantastic. But if people from outside of the area show up, like, then I think we're starting to do our job right.
Well, as long as things line up that day, I plan to be there, Ben,
Oh,
and
very good.
make sure, and we'll make sure that we, spread the word about it from our end on this part of the I-29 corridor. So, what about what you need from folks in the community at this point? What kind of support can we give, and just maybe share some insights and ideas.
Yeah, well, I guess one thing that I'm trying to push myself to believe in is transparency. It's a tough value, if you will, for people who are starting things, especially in the Midwest, because we want to protect who we are, right? And so we don't want people to know if we're struggling. We don't want people to know if we're succeeding. We just kind of want people to know that we're somewhere in the middle and we're average. And making waves can be a little bit troublesome, but for this organization, for it to do its job right, to actually help entrepreneurs and to help startups, people need to call us out, like when we're not doing our job correctly. And so this is open invite for, yeah, we're a couple months in, so give us a little slack, but much more than that, I think it's time to say, like, this is what you're missing. This is what needs to be done. These are the stories that are not being told. This is, we did a self-criticism on our blog and said we're gender biased and we're falling into the same traps of lots of entrepreneurial organizations. We're featuring men entrepreneurs and we're just forgetting that there are women out there creating cool things too. And I think those type of criticisms are actually what we need more than anything. And it doesn't need to be mean-spirited. It needs to say, like, you can do better and here's how. So I want feedback, I want criticism, and I want to make this as transparent of an organization as I can.
Okay, well, that's great, and hopefully that criticism comes to you in a respectful and constructive way, so you can actually, focus on the opportunity.
I think it does, though, if you invite it. If you act like you're not above it, or there's a side of me that I've struggled with for a long part of my life, is that I get really defensive when I get criticized, and like I found that when you kind of embrace the criticism, like some pretty good, cool things happen.
It's actually one of the not to plug my own business, but it's actually one of the tenets that GPS theory is built around. Is you're kind of giving other people a gift by asking them and giving them an opportunity to help you. And if you give that gift, the gift you're going to receive back is probably tenfold of what you give. And through that approach, it's the only way you're really going to build up real trust, because people understand intent that way, and they have a better understanding of how much you're willing to give up in terms of control, so that
Right.
it's not all about you, because you're here to serve a customer. That's why you created Think 29, not just for Ben Hanten and your employee.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, if we're gonna do something, let's do it well. Let's make it important. Let's make it count. And at the core of what we're doing here is to try to help entrepreneurs. So then we should be told if we're not doing that job effectively, or how we could do it better.
And from a community standpoint, I think that's such a great statement, Ben, because when I think of the word community, I always think of small town USA. I grew up in small town USA. I live in a small town today, and the one thing that small communities need are people who are going to meet everyone else's needs. And so at some point, someone may not do that as well as they could, and the rest of the community needs to be able to say, hey, if we're gonna kind of keep this ecosystem in balance, either we have to find a way to fill the gap you just created, or you need to fill it again like you were. And
Right.
so there is a real need for that in a community, in a community-based setting. And so I think it's a great statement to make in terms of how you want people to help.
Yeah, it's needed, and it's uncomfortable, but embrace being uncomfortable. I think it'll be all right.
That's right. When you feel that fear, that's your comfort zone stretching a little, right?
Yeah.
So, last question, how can people get in touch? I know you mentioned your website. I don't know if there's anything else you want to share about how people can get in touch with you to provide that criticism or
Sure.
help.
Yeah, great. No, we're on obviously think29.com, also facebook.com/think29, Twitter it's think29blog. You can email us any tips, which is tips@think29.com. And we have some exciting things that we're looking forward to doing in the coming months. One of them is a van tour where we're going to actually be bringing some of the startup leaders, if you will, from community to community, and we're going to put on several events in 2 days. But we're not, again, we're trying not to be the ones at the center. We're not saying we're going to create our event. We want those communities to create their event. We're just going to showcase it to new people. We're also looking at doing a job crawl this fall where we're going to try to get some people who are interested in technology and innovation, see how we can align them with some job opportunities. But I think there's a lot more. There's a lot that one of the biggest struggles out there is like there's a zillion choices we have, and again, when you're the type of person that says yes to everything, that can be tough. So help us make the right choices. Give us some feedback of what you'd like to see.
Okay, well, great. Anything else to add then, Ben? Anything else you want to share?
No, I really appreciate your support of Think 29, and I think you're one of those guys that I saw wearing a T-shirt from the original concepts, and it helps keep pushing us to do a good job. So thank you.
I was gonna close with that, saying that I do have my Think 29 T-shirt, and as you said that earlier, I said, dang it, I wish I put that thing on instead of this Boom Life T-shirt. So that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, we'll have to do a T-shirt swap. We just got some brand new ones made up. So
Awesome. All right, sir. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you participating in BoomShare. Have a great evening, and thanks again.
hey, thanks a lot, Tom. Good to talk to you.
All right. Bye.